I have the champion list from the Texas Regionals. This is a victory list. Do we love victory? Who here loves victory?
I do. Victory is life.
David, I lost your camera. Are you still there?
There is no victory. There is only the collective.
Victory is irrelevant. But yes.
I don't know if they would say that. That struck me as a little bit odd when I was saying it. So.
Indeed. All right. So here we have a super defensive, agile Voyager, rolling as many defense dice as possible. It was a 30-point USS Voyager with the independent Romulan flagship, Jean-Luc Picard, the starter one, of course, Admiral Kirk, 2 copies of Cheat Death, the multi-adaptive shielding from the Raven, transphasic torpedoes, Tom Paris, Elizabeth Shelby from the Jaeger, Sulu from the Enterprise, the original Enterprise, the evading one, and Mr. Spock also from the original Enterprise. So this thing could roll 1, 2 base, 3 from the flagship, 4 Tom Paris, 5, 6 from Sulu, 7 if you're going 7 and a reroll of blanks if you're going up against Borg with Elizabeth Shelby.
And 1 more for multi-adaptive shielding.
Oh, did I miss that one? I did miss that one. 8 defense dice. Add on top of that,
and that's
add on top of that our favorite blind that we just went over, Scout 255 with the drone captain and the proton beam weapon, and have a pretty solid little list here. David, what are your initial thoughts?
I really like it. I like the fact that it's faction pure in everything that we're talking about, and the crazy shenanigans that exist with Weyoun Vero, with cloaked mines we were thinking could be a big thing, that this is something you can get from essentially retail releases. Everything outside of multi-adaptive shielding is a retail release.
And Shelby.
Oh, and Shelby.
Shelby's
Sorry,
a little easier.
I consider the blinds retail, and I shouldn't.
Gotcha.
But even then, I mean, Shelby isn't absolutely necessary to this. She certainly helps. Yeah, I mean, Admiral Kirk is really the linchpin of this build. His ability to disable stuff is probably what won. I think I was reading some of the winners' postings, and he said that Admiral Kirk, to get in there and disable things over and over and over again, just kept the pressure on all of his opponents.
Oh yeah, and that's something I've liked about him ever since he was first announced. Like, man, this is a very versatile thing that doesn't require a slot.
Yeah, and the best thing was, I don't know for sure, I would fly this where I'd use the scout every turn to use Admiral Kirk's fleet action to disable something. I wouldn't be using a Voyager action to do it.
Because you can keep up the pressure with Voyager with just, battle stations and target lock and scan for Mr. Spock, and
yeah,
I believe that was actually the strategy. It might have been. I don't think he ever went for evades, but I mean, battle stations with 8 defense dice on defense, and then whatever your 4 or 5 attack dice on offense plus the target plus Mr. Spock from the scan. I mean, you don't have to even ration your battle station usage. You have it on both sides.
Right. Plus that scan's hurting your opponent's defense, and you're just getting in there to punch hard.
Indeed. Tucker, how do you feel about it?
Here is the way I feel about it. I am not a fan of investing 15 points in 2 cheat deaths and a multi-adaptive shielding, and the reason is only one of those 2 is going to work at once. In other words, if you're cheating death, multi-adaptive shielding is already dead, and if multi-adaptive shielding comes through for you, you've wasted 10 points on cheat death. So here's what I would do. I would actually I would actually drop the multi. The only change I would make to this build, which I'm otherwise very fond of, is I would drop multi-adaptive shielding, and I would replace it with high-energy sensor sweep. And the reason is this. If you're taking a free, let's say your action allocation on this is you're slewing, and Romulan gets you battle stations and Picard gets you scan. If I can instead slew battle stations from flagship, and then scan from high energy sensor sweep, I can then use Picard to evade every turn. Now, what that means is I've effectively traded. No, well, number one, the downside of this is it doesn't work well against mines, but that doesn't seem very likely in this meta. We're not seeing a lot of mines. So with that exception in mind, I'm trading a defense die and a disabled shield every turn for a guaranteed evade result every turn, and I think in the long run that's probably better.
Gotcha.
Especially considering that I have a lot of shields to begin with, and I have a good amount of defense dice to begin with.
Pete Chappell in the chat is asking if maybe instead of Spock we bring in Scotty for the later game shield repair. What do you guys think about that?
No, because you want the battle stations on defense.
Yeah, it's the quality afforded by Mr. Spock, especially when you have as many ways to get a free scan as you do here. It's not worth it. I mean, especially and here's the other thing: if you're Scottying, you can't Sulu.
That is a problem.
Right, and if you're Scottying, you're losing your attack value, which you definitely need late game to be able to finish somebody off. I'd much rather have, if you're going to take Scotty, I'd much rather use Scotty to disable your shields and get the extra attack dice.
Oh yeah, of course. Since he's versatile like that, you can do it either way.
Right. But just bringing Scotty as a means of repairing your shields late game, I wouldn't do it. I'd take Harry Kim before I took Scotty. Just as a one use, but I don't think it's good enough. I don't think you get enough quality and enough benefit from Scotty as opposed to what he costs you.
I mean, what are we rolling every turn? We're rolling 5 attack dice most turns.
Yes,
probably.
Okay. There are 2 sides of battle stations on each attack die. And Spock increases, that means you're essentially increasing your chance of getting a hit by 0.25 per attack die. So Spock on a 5-die ship effectively adds 0.125 attack dice without disabling shields and without taking an action.
Yeah, plus he's lowering your opponent's defense because of the scan token. That's going to help.
That's going to subtract 0.325 evades from your opponent's results. So assume that means that it adds 0.325 hits. So you're up to a little bit over a hit and a half, which makes Scotty really just not worth the trade.
Yeah. Oh, in the chat, he's talking about how he's going to use this for OP3. We will get to that because my girlfriend ran a Super Voyager and she did pretty well with it, so we'll get there when we get to OP3.
Yeah, this is a good, just really quickly though, I would consider this a solid OP3 build as well.
Yes.
Cool. But yeah, the one benefit that you can get with Scotty is it can keep your multi-adaptive shielding up longer. But beside that, yeah, there's a lot of action dichotomy here, because you don't want to. Because if you want to use Admiral Kirk, you can't use Sulu. If you want to use Sulu, you can't use Scotty, and all three of those together on the same ship is kind of a waste of points.
Well, I'm with Dave in that it should probably be your blind buy using Admiral Kirk.
Yeah. Should that survive? Let's see. Weaknesses of this build. What do you guys see here?
Rolls to conditional surrender.
Yeah. I mean, you can still disable that with Admiral Kirk, but...
Not with cost, not effectively.
Gotcha. So a conditional surrender cost build?
Yeah. And conditional surrender should include costs or Varel. I mean, whichever. Take your pick. But the major weakness of one ship builds is that they roll to conditional surrender. Look, aside from that, this is all around an incredibly solid build.
Mm-hmm.
You know? I mean, what am I going to say? It rolls great quality attacks, great quality defense. It has transphasic torps to, as I believe the winner did, just blow the opponent's blind buy out of the sky if they're a marauder or a, what do you call it, cube. This is...
basically anything, because the only thing that can cloak is the mirror ship.
No, the other ships have high enough durability that I expect them to survive a transphasic hit. I mean,
gotcha.
The Vulcan is basically an Excelsior.
Mm-hmm.
And even with the quality you have, I don't expect you to get 9 net hits in one 10-die shot, especially because you can't re-roll it.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, it should mention that, you know, this doesn't automatically lose to conditional surrender, because if you get in close enough to use Kirk, you do have some options, because the conditional surrender player can only re-enable either his captain or his talent, you know, once a turn. So that would be every time you get Kirk off, you essentially deny him one of his negations, which will help a lot. But it's still hard. Number one, because it's Voyager, it has a pretty terrible maneuver dial. I know some people will get on me about that, but I insist that it is terrible, because number one, you cannot turn around. Number two, you cannot go backwards.
Well, the other really interesting thing about this build, and the really critical thing when it comes to playing against it in terms of weaknesses, it doesn't have checkoff. So they're only going to be using their green maneuvers for the most part. If they need to 360, they're going to be confined to their green maneuvers, which on Voyager is really not that great.
Mm-hmm. Especially if, as I recall now from the battle report, one particularly ingenious player was running Borg missile.
Yeah.
There's no way you're getting 4 auxiliary tokens off of this thing.
Just check the balcony door. Leave you two.
So yeah.
I didn't see the light on. I was kind of wondering what was going on.
So yeah, be a little tough there. Let's see. Other than that, I mean, dealing with this thing, once you get behind Voyager, it's going to have kind of a hard time getting around you. In the Nebula condition, I mean, it can always still use its 360 arc, but in Energy Flux, it has a bit of an advantage. But
yeah, because its attack dice doesn't get halved, so that's nice. It's rolling more dice than Borg in that case.
Mm-hmm. But if you can get behind it at range 3, and you can stick there, which is not too hard, which is not too difficult considering the Borg maneuver dials. I mean, you're going to sit there and you're going to take pot shots at it, and then it'll take forever for it to turn around and try to get back at you.
Yeah, but on the flip side, in Nebula, Borg doesn't have that option. In Nebula, Voyager's 360 arc is almost as good as a Borg's.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, for everything except for the auxiliary power token.
Yes, that was why I said almost.
Yep.
And that's a fairly major thing, but.
Mm-hmm. David, any more thoughts from you?
No, I'm sitting here trying to figure out how I'd even beat it, and I'm not entirely sure. It's solid.
You start ganking its crew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As a Borg player, the immediate weakness here is I take down Spock, and that practically shuts down their offense, unless they want to start using their battle stations for offense, which is not a great play. I take Shelby, that gets rid of their rerolls. Now,
see, big, lots of upgrade things like this is one of the reasons I like Croesus a lot. Because the first time I use Croesus, I'll deactivate. I'll probably deactivate Spock and take Shelby, or deactivate Shelby and take Spock, and then the next turn I can deactivate Sulu and take Paris. Like, these are guys that I can use to very good effect.
Yeah.
And then if he wants to use them again, he's stuck trying to re-enable them on top of not being able to actually use Sulu or use the extra Admiral Kirk action or whatnot.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know how many of the top builds were running Croesus. Because that really seems like the way to shut things down now.
The answer is, as far as I can recall from the thread, not many. The final match was this against a Picard Ducat Borg Sphere pairing, which is just going to roll to this. I mean, that is a really good matchup for this build because it rolls so many defense dice so well against the Borg, and they have absurd quality, but you have absurd quality too.
Yeah.
And you have absurd offensive quality, and they don't. And they don't have absurd defensive quality. They can just take hits.
Defense? What defense?
Exactly.
Yeah, the two sphere list is nice for just general offense, but against anything specialized, it kind of falls apart. You need some kind of some way to dismantle your opponent's combos, or else you run into something like this and you just get stomped.
Yeah. Right, and the thing is, this I'm trying to find the actual battle report. This build. Let me see. I think he played a conditional surrender build at some point. Let me see. No. He does. He plays conditional surrender, but he doesn't play it with Wayne or Shroud, so he only gets to negate a couple of attacks.
Gotcha. So not the infinite recursion, but a bit of recursion.
Right. And he never. It looks like he just didn't run into a dedicated attack cancellation build, and I don't think he'd do well against that.
Yeah, it'd be hard. Like I could see him getting Kirk off at least once, in the general's charge straightforward. But if he doesn't keep his blind buy, or his blind buy dies early, then it's going to be a lot harder for him, because especially with Voyager, it's being easy to maintain range from Voyager.
Yeah. But still, it's a good build that has a lot going for it, that is going to win against a lot of things.
Oh, yeah.
But you have to be aware of its weaknesses and know that just because this worked in one venue doesn't mean that it's the build that will win every regional.
Like even magnetometric charges, minefields, anything that ignores defense dice, which is basically this thing's one-trick pony.
Yeah.
But magnetometric charges are not going to be legal for this event.
Oh, that is true.
So
classic mines, cloaked mines, 5 of them, 6 of them, run them all.
Nope, because they still get defense with the multi-adaptive shielding.
That's correct.
Oh, that's right. Huh. Never mind that one then.
And that's why you keep the multi-adaptive shielding on, rather than high-energy sensor sweep.
Yeah, I guess that's true. So high-energy sensor sweep just improves your efficiency, and you're probably beating everything that isn't conditional surrender at this point. So yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Good catch there, David. I was about to go right past that.
Yeah. Hey, that's why that's why it's not a one-man show, right, Will?
This is why we pay you the big bucks, man.
I mentioned that quickly when I said that I would switch it out for high energy sensor sweep, and the question I have really is how many cloaked mines are we going to see at this event?
Gotcha.
I mean, we could. I guess we might get a drone or something as a mine layer, but.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really, ever since the Borg came into power, the cloaked mines has not been as big a worry on my mind anyway. Because the Borg can see cloaked mines and be like, "Oh, I'm going to go the other way." Most other ships have to be like, "Oh, I have to go through them." And that's pretty much
right.
that.
I sort of wonder if there's a way to play mines that's anti-Borg. Like, instead of dropping them right in front of the ship, drop them to the side so they can't spin or something.
I mean, even in that case, the Borg, since you're not rolling defense dice against them, the Borg are taking the same damage either way. It's not as big of a pain as if, like, say, a cloak for a cloaking fleet. Like, the Borg can afford an extra 1 or 2 or 3 hits over the course of a couple turns.
That's true.
Because they just stack on the hull and the shields. They don't care. Well, they don't care. I shouldn't say they don't care, but they don't care nearly as much. Because if you roll max damage, 3 damage against a 6 HP ship is huge. 6 damage against a 14 HP ship, not so much.
Correct.
I say 6. I meant 3. But yeah, like both ways, I don't see the Borg caring too much about mines, unless of course they get stuck behind, like this Super Voyager and can't really hurt it. In which case they have to like go back and forth across the minefield or something like. At which point they would just fly away.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess with a super cube, even if you're not doing Way and Barrel, you can turn that into, 25 HP with double ablative hull armor.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
the one thing you could do is use them to mine a planet if you get the chance, since the Borg love dancing around planets.
Don't think they'd care. I don't know.
It helped.
Yeah. I think that's another show, though.
Mm-hmm. But, all right then. Let's see. Any final thoughts on the Agile Voyager build? David?
No, I like it. You gotta know its weaknesses, and most importantly, you have to know how to fly it. Like, if you're going to a regional and you've never flown Voyager like this, practice it for the love of God, because you need to know what you're doing. This is not a build you can just take and go, oh, okay, now I can win with it. No, you need to fly it.
Yeah. It is more straightforward than some other combo builds, but yeah, experience is like still the best thing to have. Tucker?
Yes.
Especially because, and this is something I can't believe we forgot to mention, this ship is incredibly vulnerable to bumping. Because it's flying Picard plus Kirk, it's going after absolutely everyone in the movement phase, which means that with careful planning and a knowledge of their limited maneuver dial, you really should be able to get them to bump fairly consistently with something like Borg, which can be dangerous for them.
Yeah, because they'd lose the free battle station from the flagship, the free action from Picard. They still have pretty good defense, but
well, they'd lose the Silu dice, they'd lose the battle stations on offense from Spock. They'd lose a lot.
Yeah.
Now, with that said, the only way to get an attack cancellation build in Ship Pure is some pretty ridiculous shenanigans that's doable, but not really very likely to be seen. And in Faction Pure, you can't do it at all. So to a lesser degree in Ship Pure and definitely in Faction Pure, I consider this the build to beat. This is a ship that in Faction Pure will even eventually wear down a tactical cube unless they're really overloading on assimilation tubules. And
double sphere, double tubule.
Double sphere, double tubule will put up a decent fight against this, but I feel like this is something that, I mean, I feel like, especially if you manage to get them at range 3, even for just one turn, this is something that can deal with that fairly effectively if it tries. This is a very good build. This is a very good build for OP3. This is a great build for the regionals. This is in general just, and it's refreshing to see at this point a great build that is pure and is not Borg. Now, I have a prediction to make, which is in just a couple months we're all going to be as sick of Super Voyager as we are of Super Borg. But with that said, this is just this is fantastic. I would not. I don't have anything to change about this build except the higher entry sensor sweep, and if I thought I might see a lot of mines, I wouldn't even do that.
Yeah. For me, my idea is I've never really been a huge fan of transphasic torps. I know they have their place, but I would even replace those with quantum torpedoes, so you have a reusable rear attack, and that frees up, I believe, a tech slot from the Romulan flagship, which I could throw, I don't know, cloaked mines or something on. I haven't really thought about that part too much, but there's plenty of good techs out there that you can choose from with the extra points.
Yeah.
Let me think about that. Romulan is no, Romulan gives you an extra weapon and an extra crew. The extra crew is used, so you'd only be able to get another weapon.
Gotcha.
And you couldn't afford antimatter mines before somebody says
it. You could do photons and antimatter mines.
Yeah, but at that point you're seriously reducing the quality of your attacks for not much gain. Antimatter they actually have to run over the token, which is not the best.
Or you drop it on them. You could run double antimatter. You could also run quantum and secondary torpedo launcher. That would work.
Yeah, that would.
Yeah, and then you still have the quantums for later, so I could see going with that, I guess. But yeah, that is our look at the super agile Voyager build from the Texas Regionals. Took first place, beat a couple of spheres, beat a what was the other one? Someone had a really good, was it a sphere or a cubelist who was doing the other battle reports? I don't remember, but it was still pretty good. Because this did not go undefeated in the tournament. This did take a loss in the Swiss rounds.
Actually, it took a loss to the Borg build using conditional surrender.
The conditional surrender one, gotcha.
But it wasn't a full conditional surrender, and when they met in the semis, it ended up beating it.
I believe it was a close game, though, but